Booster. Go. Retro. Go. Vital.
We're go flying.
Guidance.
Guidance, go.
Launch control, this is Houston. We are go for launch.
I feel the need for speed.
You've got to ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Join us or die.
And welcome to Mark Groupie Outdoors, the podcast. I am your host, of course, Mark Groupie, and we have a great guest for you on today, Larry Dee Jones, the Bowhunting Hall of Fame. He's been an elk caller and hunter for his whole life and has seen the progress of archery elk hunting and the industry from the well, not the inception. I would say he was probably not around when elk were invented, but he's has quite a bit of knowledge when it comes to elk hunting. Ryer, before we start on any farther, do you want to have people see where they can find us all?
They can't see anything, Mark. This is an audio-only podcast.
Well, they could see one of our videos, maybe. Maybe they hear this, and they could find us at The Community Show.
This was unscripted, folks. Mark just made a segue from podcast, connecting it to our large video library that you can find on YouTube at The Community Show. You can also find it on our website, thecommunityshow.tv. You can also find this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, www.markgroupieoutdoors.com/podcast, and you can find us on, as we millennials like to call it, the Gram at The Community Show. Do you know what the Gram is, Mark?
Hey,
Mark.
I got nothing.
Mark.
I got nothing. Yes, Larry.
Give him a You know, I don't know.
The Tindergram. Tindergram? Is that what it's called? Tindergram?
Tinder snap face.
Tinder snap?
Tinder
snapper?
face.
Anyways, you can
Tinder
find us on
snapper. That's a new name for millennials.
Tinder snapper. Anyways, and of course, before we start any podcast, we like to make Ryer the Millennial angry. So just to do that, well, he deleted me. He tried to shut that. There. Edit that out, millennial.
We're sorry.
Earn your keep. Earn your keep.
Let's get on with the cast. Oh, good grief.
Anyways, it's winding down towards the end of April. We're finishing up on our California turkey season here. I know some places in the country are just getting cracking on it, but we're winding ours down, and we have a little youth and archery left after that. So hope you guys are all having a successful time out there. Fishing's hot here in California, out in the San Joaquin Delta. Lots of stripers being caught, and it's a great time for you to go fishing or book a fishing trip. And it's red hot out there. Great time to be out on the water. So today, like I mentioned, we have Larry Dee Jones on our podcast. He's a pioneer of the elk calling industry, and he can really shed some light and some history on the whole elk hunting. I don't know if you call it everything from the business, from actually to doing it itself. So, Larry, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Mark.
So, Larry, how old were you when you got started bow hunting?
I was 20 years old.
20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so, since I don't want to do my math, that was in the 50s.
Yeah. Well,
No.
maybe about 10 years later than that. 1962.
1962. Okay. Well, I was
I
close.
think it was. I got married in 61, and it was shortly after that, so maybe in
Okay.
61. Too.
All right. So you could have been bow hunting in your teens, though.
I could have been, yeah, but I did not.
You weren't. And what did you pursue at the time? What was your first game that you were after?
Well, I grew up with 5 brothers and 2 sisters, and so we ate a lot of venison. And so we hunted with, of course, rifles and that sort of thing for black-tailed deer. I never did hunt elk until I started bow hunting. But, yeah, I killed my first black-tailed deer when I was 11.
Wow.
Yeah, so...
And like you said, you guys were feeding the family with it.
Yeah, we all had tags when season came around, and and we tried to fill as many of those as possible. And we usually filled them all so that we could fill up the freezer, and Mom would can venison, and yeah.
So, what year did you start elk hunting? You mentioned archery. You didn't really.
It was my second year of archery hunting. I got started because I was working in a plywood veneer plant, and the guy running the lathe, his name was Jack Rogers. He said one day, he said, "Larry, you want to go hunting this weekend?" I said, "Oh no." He said, "Do you want to go bow hunting this weekend with us?" I said, "Well, I don't have a bow." And he said, "Well, I got a spare bow." I said, "Well, I don't have any arrows either." So he loaded me a bow with arrows, and I got a shot at a doe. And of course, I missed her. I didn't really know much about it, but it was such a thrill. I can still, I guess I thought I was going to go boom when I let the arrow go, but it went. I remember the bowstring going twang, and seeing that arrow just float out there, and of course went underneath the doe. But it was such a thrill. I mean, I just got hooked right then.
Uh-huh.
And so my next paycheck, I went and bought a Bear Super Kodiak recurve bow. They didn't have compounds back then, by the way, Mark. And then I bought some of Bill Sweetland's compressed cedar arrows, which was the finest wood shafts. They didn't even have aluminums back then, so that was before. It was a premium arrow, and some Bodkin broadheads.
Bodkin
broadheads, which some of your listeners may not even know what they are and what they look like, but they're a 3-bladed broadhead. I knew so little about archery that I did the typical thing. I put them on the end of my arrows, and I didn't sharpen them. They were somewhat sharp, but not really sharp. And 2 weeks later, I killed my first deer.
Wow!
Sure luck.
Sure luck. And you've been hooked ever since.
Yeah. And so then I started to get to elk hunting. I started practicing, feverishly. By the next hunting season, I was a pretty darn good shot with my bow. And I shot a doe the very first day of the archery season that year. And so I was working again with Jack, and I was feeding the lathe, and he was running it. So we're, they're together all the time when we're working. And I was kind of bummed out because I feel my tag, can't go hunting. And he said, "Well, why don't you go elk hunting?" And I said, "Well, I don't know where to go." He says, "I do." So he told me, and two weeks later, I killed my first elk. Sure luck. Well, except I could shoot then.
Yeah. Was there separate still right now? We have separate archery seasons over rifle seasons. Was there separate seasons at that time, or were you out competing with the gun hunters?
We had some archery seasons, but not like we have today. I mean, we have a lot more opportunity spaces in Oregon where I live, and where I got my elk, there was a extended archery season. They called it kind of like a hazing hunt to keep the elk away from farmers' fields. Mm-hmm. And so we could hunt antlerless elk for like about 2 or 3 months, but you had boundaries where you had to stay in certain distance from farms and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
And so what year was that? Do you remember what year that was?
Well, it would have been, if I do my math right, my second year of archery season. So it was probably 1963.
63.
Yeah.
And so obviously there was a few magazines out of outdoor life or Sports the Field, Field and Stream. Were those publications out at that time?
I don't know. I wasn't really. I was at a young age. I wasn't really reading a lot about hunting and that sort of thing. But there was very few people that you could mentor. I mean, it would mentor you. You didn't know much about archery and hunting elk and stuff. There was not cassettes and DVDs and video, that sort of thing available. It just wasn't. So it was kind of like learn on your own.
Yeah, and what about getting information out of your home state? Like, I mean, would the thought of hunting in New Mexico not even enter your psyche just because it's like you might as well be on the moon?
Exactly. Yeah. So I hunted elk in that same. Well, I mean, I hunted elk in other units too, but I basically started keying in on that agricultural hunt that I was doing, and I learned more there about elk hunting than probably most people do in a lifetime, because I was tracking these elk, to their bedding areas and knew where their feed areas. So I learned where they like what and where they like to feed, where they wanted to bed, the likely spots. And then when I started calling elk later on, that gave me a great advantage over people that just said, I'm going to go out and call in an elk, because they didn't know the basic rules of finding them where. And eventually I got so, and of course I can still do this, look at a topographical map and tell you the most likely spots just because there's moisture here and there's flatter ground here and that sort of thing. In fact, I remember later on in the years I started doing seminars and that sort of thing, and an outfitter in New Mexico called me up, and he had some clients. He wanted to, I guess, wine and dine them a little bit, but he wanted me to come while these clients were there and give a seminar on, elk hunting. And so I did. He had his guides. I guess maybe it was just his guides. And so they came in, and I said, "Okay, show me a topo map of where you're hunting." And I looked at it for pretty quick, and I said, "Oh my gosh, look at this spot right here." He said, "Just got this and this and this," and the one guy's just like he just like stopped, and his mouth dropped open. And he said, "That's the best darn place for elk that we know of." So it's kind of proved my point that of course you're not always right, and they're just not they're likely spots, but there's no guarantee there's going to be elk there.
Right. But if you can look at a map and look around several of those, there's a good chance that one of those is going to materialize for you. Yeah,
that's correct. You're going to hunt the most likely spots, and if you push on and determine, you are going to get into elk. And in lots of days, that's going to be every day. Mm-hmm. But you just keep hunting different spots every day. So.
Mm-hmm. So tell us, you mentioned calling, then what elk calls were out there in the 60s, and then how did you see a need for that, or what led you into elk calling? There
really wasn't. There's only two things I know of once I started getting interested in calling elk. And I got interested because there was a fellow in our community. His name was Billy Cruz. And Billy Cruz had went into the Wallowa Mountains, and he had a little plastic pipe with a piece of wood in it. Herders actually made this. And I made one myself, but later on. But you just blow on it, and you blow harder you blew, the higher the pitch. So you can get about 3 tones out of this little whistle, basically what it was. And you hit those kind of higher notes that the elk like, and they would answer. There wasn't anybody calling them back then. So he had killed some nice bulls, and he got me interested. And he said, "Yeah, you ought to do this, Larry." And we had in Eugene, Oregon at that time, there was a park up on a hill called the Hendricks Hendricks Park, I think it was called. And there was a bull elk in there. And so I thought, I want to go up there and I want to hear this bull bugle. I want to hear what they sound like, because I'd never heard one. Nowadays, you can just grab any CD and you can hear what they sound like, but back then, no. And so I went up there, and there's also one that was like a little curly cue, a tube, corrugated tube, and you'd go, and so I got one of those, and I got the other tube, and I went up there, and I blew on that, and nothing, and I tried the other one, and nothing, and I just got all discouraged. I go, well, gee, I'd really like to hear what this bull sounds like. And all of a sudden, down, and this is surrounded by city, okay? Down somewhere in the streets, someone put on the brakes of their car, and it went, eek! And the bull screamed back at it. So I heard what he sounded like. So if you want to, get an elk, you just take an old rusty
brakes, dirt on the brakes or something. And
I did that one time too. I mean, it wasn't on purpose. I hit my brakes and it went geek. And my son Steve said, "Way to go, Dad." I said, they'll just think it's another elk. And I stepped out and the bull answered. It's funny.
So that start getting in your mind. Then I'd like to, I think I need to make something that can do this.
Well, no, it wasn't then that I did that. But what I did do is I started playing with my voice, trying to make those sounds. And I actually have a talent or a gift from God, whatever, that if I can hear something, if I can retain it, especially if I can hear the sound 2 or 3 times, sometimes I can mimic it, Mm-hmm. So I heard that, and so I started goofing around trying to bugle with my voice. And then I went hunting in the Minam where Billy Cruz was hunting, not with him, but on a separate trip. And I actually I killed a spike bull in there, and I met a fellow by the name of Jim Brackberry, who some of the people that collect and shoot recurve bows. Jim eventually was a bowyer, and anyway, Jim helped me pack that elk out, and I met him as I was heading back to camp that night that I killed the spike, and their campfire was off the side of the trail, and I went over and spoke with them, and they said, "We'll help you pack that out tomorrow, your elk out." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, take your bows, because there's a couple nice basins up there." So we went up there, and I said, "Why don't you go over here, and Jim, you go over here." And he had a partner, and so I went kind of down through the middle one, and I tried bugling with my voice. I made the sound, and it was almost like an echo came back, and in comes this big 6-point bull. And of course, I've already filled my jag. I just watched him in awe. And then I realized, hey, I can do this. Uh-huh. So I bugled a lot of bulls in with using my voice. And it wasn't till 1979 that I heard this sound that from a call. It was actually, what happened was my friend Dwight Shue had talked to this guy in Arizona, and he had used a herder's deer call, and he had bent the reed on it and blowed on hard on it, and it would kind of have a high-pitched note, kind of like an elk, And so I'd shot an elk, 5-point elk, and Dwight had packed in with another friend of his up on the ridge above me. This is a great story. I tell you, it crack you up. Anyway, so I got this elk, and the next day I was out. I was actually thinking about making some cassettes on hunting elk, and so I was going to try to get some calls answer, and I was going to try to record their sound. Uh-huh. So, and I still had a deer tag, so I was going to be hunting, but I thought I'd try to call while I was doing it. Anyway, So, unknowns to me, Dwight came into camp. Miriam and the kids were in our camp. We had a drop camp, and we'd all hiked in. And Dwight said, "I heard Larry up on Bull Basin yesterday." Miriam said, "No." Larry was backing out elk. So Dwight had heard this bull. He thought it was me. And he said, "I ain't going to let Larry call me in." He walked away from it. And so then he comes into camp and he tells Miriam that. Then he goes up in the hill, and I hear this kind of a little bit of, it wasn't quite right. I thought that could be a bull, I guess, kind of a little noise. And so I answered with my voice, and we had to exchange it, and I could tell they was getting closer. And pretty soon, just by the crunching and stuff, I thought, "No, that's some guys, So I said, "Yoo-hoo, I'm not an elk." And I heard Dwight say, "I'm going to shoot him anyway." And so he walked away from the bull.
from the real one, and then
I called him. And he'd heard me call many times, with my voice, but so I was pretty elky sounding back then. So I took that I went and bought one of those Herder's deer calls, and I bent the reed, and I got it so it could make a nice high-pitched bugle. Then I realized, when I voice bugle and I use a tube, it sounds more elky. So I combined the two, and that's how I came up with my original elk call.
And what was the animal's response in those days as compared to?
Oh, it was wonderful. Yeah, it was really effective. With my prototype of it, the first year, in 11 days, I called 13 bulls in. Now, I'm not talking about answers. I'm talking about bulls I called in 30 yards and under before I killed one.
Huh.
I mean, I passed up a bunch of them, and of course, there was nobody bugling back then.
Right.
But it's totally different nowadays.
Yeah.
You can get, I know more about it. I can use mouth calls and, variety of calls. And I'm undoubtedly a better caller, more knowledgeable. But I'll get answers. But call them in, where they just come right into it. You can get a nice clean shot at close range, has changed. They have adapted to us calling to them and have learned. The bulls that you call in nowadays are going to be the spikes and 2-year-olds and sometimes a 3-year-old, But those big mature bulls, they stand off, and actually sometimes in places where they get called a lot, they move away.
Yeah. And then, of course, like anything, it all depends on pressure, and it's just, you can get to some private ranches and premium units where you'll have different, but when you're talking about the public land, over the counter, or readily available tags, it's not the same.
Yep, that's right.
So then on to the diaphragm call. When did you was that the one that you modified? Was that the deer call that you modified?
No,
or that was
no.
So that
was a metal reed type of call, that you blew on, and the harder you blew on it, the higher the pitch, because just design of the curve of the reed.
Is that the one I heard? Someone told me they had one. It took about 200 pounds of air pressure to get it to go all the way.
Well, that's what they felt, but it really only takes about 3 pounds. You can't push that much with your lungs.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to. The trick to it was actually using your diaphragm muscle to create pressure, and not so much wind, but just to give it an extra hard push of air to make it pop up to that higher pitch. But yeah, some people struggle with that.
Yeah, I hunted with an outfitter in Idaho who used some of your original stuff. And he when I told him I hunted with you, he'd made those comments. Oh, I used to have a old Jones call and talked about blowing it and everything. It was the metal reed and everything. So
yeah.
When did you then start doing the diaphragm calls?
It was about see I started with my prototype in 180 and 81, maybe it's 81, and then it was probably 82 or 83. I developed the mouth diaphragm, and the mouth diaphragm was nothing new. They used them for turkeys, back east, and what I did, the only thing I really did was I came up with the metal frame that call has, and I designed it so it had a nice waffle pattern in the metal so that it would clamp the latex tight and wouldn't slip.
Uh-huh.
And some of them use glue to do it. And then use different thickness of latex and the way they were laid in there to make different sounds. Some of them would be lower pitch, some of them would be a little harder to blow, but you get more volume out of them. And like a single reed, you could just do the nice soft little sounds.
So, how many bulls have you taken over your life since the?
I don't know.
Since those early days.
I don't know really. I know that the first 8 elk I took were antlerless.
Uh-huh. And
then there was years when I wouldn't get a bull that I would go on a cow hunt and get bulls. But I know that the first 19 elk I took were from that 83 till 19 years later.
Uh-huh.
And then, but I would guess that, 20, 25 bulls, something like that. Maybe more.
So you said 18 years in a row where you were successful?
19, actually.
19 years in a row you were successful.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is, maybe you hunted a couple private places, I don't know, but for the most part, this is all...
Those are all public land.
All public lands. Uh-huh. Majority of them were over-the-counter tags, right?
Oh, yeah, all of them were.
Yeah, all of them were, so...
Yeah, anybody could have done it, just like I did.
You're out there with him. So that's a pretty outstanding track record. So when you all are out there wondering who knows what about elk, the man sitting in front of me here has really seen a lot of it. Can you give us a most memorable thing that even if you didn't get it, what's the most memorable bull elk experience in calling that you've had? Do you have anything that sticks out at you?
Oh, geez. Well,
sure, you got a whole pile of them.
Yeah, but, I don't.
There's got to be so many.
There's so many stories. I think the most memorable are, in the last 5 years, I have not shot an elk, but I've had the joy of calling an elk for my son and other people that don't. Well, my son Steve, he's a pretty good caller. I taught him a few things.
Yeah, no,
he understands.
He's a fine hunter.
He understands elk kind of calling, but we team up nicely, and so that's always a memorable hunt. And I've had many hunts with my friend Dwight Shue, and we call in bulls for each other. So those are always memorable hunts, But I guess just it's fun to be able to, even though I like to drop the string myself, it's fun to go with guys that just don't have the knowledge or know how to call, but would really love to get their first elk,
Yeah.
And so,
well, that's what we're doing a lot here with my new project, The Community, and we have people coming up to join us later.
The community
today.
show.
The community show. Thank you. We don't want to get confused with the community. This is the community show where you can find at the community show.
No, not here.
Oh,
that's for later.
That's for later. Oh, okay. Anyways, trying to involve the public and getting them opportunities. We got to disclosure here, we're up at our ranch in Mariposa, and it's a beautiful spring day out here, and it's gorgeous up here. And I've been trying to get more people opportunities that, for a lifetime they might not be able to, set a foot on a place like this. So, give them that experience and share with some other people some things that they hadn't experienced yet.
Well, I can say that, my experience here with you has always been fun. We
pigs or no pigs.
Pigs or no pigs.
Yeah.
I prefer it with pigs. So so far that hasn't happened yet. But I understand hunting. Anyway, so I just think these people that have the opportunity are really blessed to be able to come here, and it's a great place. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's so great that you've done the same thing and shared your experience with others. Closest you've ever killed an elk? Closest an elk, a bull, has ever been to you that you've...
Okay, one time I was trying to call, this is in the Minam years ago, and I was trying to call this bull in for my friend George Neal. So I put George Neal out in front of me, and this bull came, and he came around him. And normally, if I'm trying to shoot something myself, I don't get behind stuff, but I was just trying to call in for him. So I was behind this big pine tree. It was probably 30 inches in diameter or something like that. And this bull comes around, and he ends up on the other side of that tree. And there was another little tree there. He started rubbing his antlers on. And so I thought, okay, if he goes any further, he's going to smell me and it's going to be over. So I might as well shoot him. So I started sidestepping around to his backside where I could put an arrow, into his lungs without him seeing me. And I made just enough to kind of clear the tree, and he backs up and he starts around my side of the tree. And if I just leaned over just a little bit, I could have slapped him right on the nose.
Huh.
And of course, the expression, I'm close to see the expression. and it was kind of like somebody was saying, oh man. His eyes got big.
Yeah.
And of course, I had tension on the bowstring, and the beauty of shooting a recurve came in then. And as he whirled, I just whipped one into his lungs, and he ran over, and I called, and he stopped and put his antlers into a snag there, like he's going to rake on it, and collapsed right there. So, so that was about maybe 3 feet.
How far was that bull? I remember watching one of your videotapes. I think it was Steven shot one, and gosh, it seemed like it walked right into his lap.
He was 5 yards from Steve.
Yeah.
That was a great little segment there, because Steve had not killed an elk before. That was his first.
Oh, really?
First elk, and. But he did a marvelous job of hunting, because I've always told him, I said, don't move when they can see, and he let that walk right past him.
Yeah, he did.
He was facing straight ahead,
right,
and the bull came off to his left, and then once he thought the bull wouldn't see him, he drew back, and swung with him, and the bull did just at the last second see him, and as the arrow penetrated he shied sideways. So. But what was even more precious...
His reaction afterwards?
His reaction. He's jumping up and down. I got him. And it grabbed a second arrow out, and it was a blunt. And then, of course, he's jumping up and down, and Dwight walked up and slapped him on the back. It's just a typical, no acting at all, just a good reaction to such a special moment.
No, I remember seeing that. It's one of the probably the very first. I think when I saw that, I don't know if I had killed an elk yet with a bow, and so that and then there wasn't even that much footage of people shooting anything. So that was I remember that.
I have people tell me today that video production, Elk Fever, is still probably one of the best that they've ever seen.
Yeah.
With all the stuff that's been put out today.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about it in today's television show of 23 or 6 minutes of however long the show is. Like it's less than that with all the commercials, and I think it's down to like 23 minutes or something like that. And then
about 23 minutes of showtime.
Yeah, you got your opening segment, and your introductions and your credits and your closing and your product sponsor segments and your tip segments and everything like that. Your typical elk hunt nowadays is condensed down to really 5 minutes of footage, and your elk fever, you had 1 and 2, right?
Yeah.
Those were both about an hour long of just pure elk hunting content and what elk hunting was like, and that was a real different time, and it's what got me excited about it.
Yeah, I sold that to Point Blank calls. So if any of the listeners would like to see any of those productions, you can still get them on DVD.
Okay.
At pointback.com,
Okay. All right. We'll have to post that. I did not know that.
Yeah.
So you can still get that. And I thought I was hoping that wasn't lost to antiquities. And
well, if the post-production teams were worth their salt, it's somewhere.
It's somewhere.
It's
somewhere. I'm sure Larry's probably got the original beta tapes in his house.
He's probably got
somewhere.
hours and hours and hours and hours of it, huh?
No?
He's got it all.
Larry's got it all?
No.
Oh, that guy's got it all,
yeah.
huh? You took it all that stuff.
I sold it all, the whole thing to him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you still have my pig charging me tape or charging Larry? Do we still have that somewhere?
I think so.
I need that original. For some reason, I don't have an original. I don't know if you have an original or not.
Probably I had to hunt for it, but I probably do. Yeah, that was my friend shot. I shot a pig with my bow, and the pig ended up charging my buddy who was trying to video the recovery, and he shot it at about one step.
I think we measured the pig from the end of his gun, and I think it was like 9 or 14 inches or something like that from the barrel when he shot it.
And the pig bowled him over.
Yeah, and the pig bowled him over.
Died.
Next thing you know was blue skies and trees flying everywhere.
And some choice words.
Well, those are terrific stories, Larry. We thank you so much for sharing that time with us. Ryder, do you got any questions or thoughts for Larry?
Yeah, I do.
All right. Well, why don't you...
Why don't I go ahead and ask him?
Why don't you go ahead and ask him?
Well, we just talked that Larry made DVDs, so that means that Larry must have filmed hunts.
Did you film hunts,
I'd like to hear about Larry filming hunts.
That's another thing that you were a pioneer, pretty much a pioneer in. It was your hunting videography. I mean, obviously there are some people that did it, but you were amongst the originals.
Well, I kind of got started with that because before I made Elk Fever, I was in a couple of elk productions or hunting video. One was about hunting a mule deer, and the other one was about hunting elk with Stony Wolf Productions.
Okay.
And I'm kind of particular how I do things. I like to do the best as we possibly can. Instead of just throwing stuff together.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I can do better than this. So then I went and bought myself a bunch of video equipment. Didn't know a darn thing about it. And just started learning. And I bought some books that actually I went out and shot some stuff naturally. And then I went to a local studio, Stafford and Sons or Stafford Incorporated, something like that. Stafford Video Productions. Duh. Anyway, and he was really helpful. Mark Stafford was really helpful and said, you need to do this. You can't do that. That's a jump cut. Well, what's a jump cut? Well, that's when your body's, standing up. Next second, it's sitting down. Next cut. So I started learning stuff from him, and then he put me on to a little book that talked about doing the different angles and that sort of thing.
Is that Schroepel's book?
Yeah.
Yeah, if we could find a link to that, that's such an easy.
I got the link to it.
Okay, that is such an easy book to read and
so video and film.
What is it called?
Video and film, film and video. What is it called? I can't put it on.
It's like Lee Schroepel or something like that. Is that the name? Anyways, you've got a link to
I got it on my computer.
We can
anyway, it gives you the basic fundamentals of film and video work of how to shoot it, the different angles and what you got to do to make a complete scene from a wide shot to a closer shots. And so when I started looking at that, then when I went to the movies, I didn't really go to the movies to
be entertained.
To be entertained. And I thought, oh, that's a neat shot. They did a mirror shot where there's looks like you're looking at the person, but really you're looking at the mirror and stuff like that. That's different. And they do rack focuses where one guy's in person. You'll see this all the time on TV nowadays. In episodes, and then so the one guy's talking, so he's sharp in view, and then the other one speaks, and one guy goes out of focus and the other one comes in, or guy or gal, whatever. Anyway, so I just got deep into it, and I noticed that when you go to the movies, you never have anybody saying, well, we were out on the trail, like this morning we were out hunting hogs, and like what we did this morning. Okay?
Right.
What the video and the people reacting to each other in the movie told the story. I mean, occasionally there'll be something, but most generally not. And also, I have realized that people enjoy movies when they get involved in it, when they suck you in to the sadness or the thrill that's going on, So you become part of that sequence. When the little kid, he gets hurt or mommy's leaving and you're sitting there and your tears starts going down your cheek and, that sort of stuff. And that's what good productions are. And that's why people like one movie over another one. You get drawn in. Get drawn in. So Elk Fever format was we don't
talk to the camera.
Talk to the camera. We talk to each other, hunter to hunter, like we normally do, and we try to shoot the scene so the viewer can go on the hunt with us. And that's, I think, what makes those productions special.
Yeah. Yep. No, those are real special that way. And
then there's hours and hours and hours of editing that people never see.
Sure.
To make things right. To make it fit and work. But if you don't shoot it right, you can't make it come out right in the studio. You got to have the video shots.
Right.
It takes lots of work.
And the sound.
Sound is more important.
Yeah.
Than the video. Because if you go to a horror movie and you turn off the sound, it's not scary. If you turn off the video and do the sounds, it's scary.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Those are good points.
Yeah.
Well, those all those different videos that you had, just what was on my mind, that goat hunting one that you did, that was really that was a great video, and I can still remember the footage of you, and I don't know if you did this afterwards or something, or when you did it, but like you're like climbing up a cliff or something. You changed the camera angle multiple times. was above you, below you, beside you, whatever, be climbing a steep cliff and then pretty much coming face to face with that Billy.
Yeah. Yeah, we shot a lot of that as it happened, but there's certain shots you can't because you're
hunting,
spooking the game.
right.
You know? But that particular production, I think I succeeded in capturing the kind of the romance or the thrill of that backcountry.
Yeah.
For example, silly things of, well, it wasn't silly, but just the fun of shooting grouse. With a outfitter, here, you try it. He's missing, and we're just having a great time,
I remember the sky. I remember footage of beautiful lakes.
Gorgeous country.
Everything there. No, that was so. Of all the footage and videos and TV shows I've seen, some of those really stick out. More memorable to me than anything stuff currently I've seen. So that was good stuff.
Yeah.
What else, Ryer? Any other? Do you want to get into more about his videography there?
Well, you guys filmed for a little bit together, didn't you?
Yeah. My first introduction to videography was Larry came up here hog hunting, and we took off from the house one morning. We're driving along. We saw some hogs, and he threw a camera in my lap, and he said, "Here, follow me." And okay, this looks like how you start the camera, and that was my first introduction to videoing hunts, and we did kill Larry later on that day or the next day. He killed a hog, and he said, "I need to come back, and we need to have you on this and finish this video." And I think you came back the next spring, and you videoed. You're nice enough to follow me around with the camera and videoed me shooting a pig. And then what did you have me do with that hog, Larry?
Well, I was trying to help a guy out, and he had this pack system. Two of us. Who else was with us?
Wasn't Byron, was it?
I don't know. Anyway, it took two of us.
Stephen.
It
was Ron. It might have been. It was Ron. It was you and Ron, my friend Ron Sauls.
Oh, okay. So we put this pig whole
pig.
Yeah.
Whole pig.
Did we gut that thing?
No.
Okay. With the whole thing in this pack system this guy had. And I told him he wanted me to do a little commercial video for him. I said, okay, we need someone carrying this hog. So we put that hog on there. It took two of us to get it up on your back. And you carried it for about 20 yards.
Yeah, I carried it about 20 yards. We tried to get good footage of me going down this hall.
That pig, I know, weighed over 200 pounds, maybe 250.
Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that the other day, and I thought, what did I try to do? Kill Mark? Break his back forever?
So here I'm trying to get this straight, have this straight look in my face. Why I'm trying not to grimace carrying this pig. And I think she did. I think we weighed it was like 230 pounds.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to work my way down the hill, through the rocks and
it
stuff
was staggering.
like that.
You weren't trying to work your way.
Trying to come up with footage for this guy, and I'm going, son of a gun, this pig's heavy.
Then we had to run over and grab it so you could get it off your back.
So I could get it off, get it off again.
Yeah.
But so Ryer now is my my producer here. He's my pack mule. So this year when we shot an elk, he carried a good lion's share of it. But at one time I was able to carry a heavy load at least for 20 yards.
Yeah, 20 yards.
As long as it went a distance, that's all that matters, right?
Yeah,
it did. It got into a pack, and I carried it down the hill a ways.
Well,
So
that's the whole philosophy of CrossFit, right? I mean, as long as the exercise gets completed, it doesn't matter your form.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah, just you could be all
I've
over
just
the place as
all
long
sorts
as
of people.
That's right. He said something about CrossFit.
Then I came down. I went to work for Bowhunter TV in 2005, 2005 as their video producer. Okay. And so then I was training videographers and for the show and how I wanted them to shoot things. And And somehow you got involved in that. I remember
Yeah, you just I remember you asked me, said, we got a project coming up, and maybe you'd want to get involved in it.
And one time I brought my my computer and stuff down here, and we had several people show up, and so I had the participants and the videographers go out, and we had Hunter and a videographer, and I said, I want you guys to build a story, a short story. But so Mark and I went out together. He was the camera guy and I was the hunter, and we didn't find any hogs that morning, which we was hopeful for. But I said, well, yeah, we got to do something, Mark. We got to make the deal. So we came to the pond down there, looked down there, there's some big old frogs, bullfrogs. And so I said, let's do a bullfrog video. So I was going to be the shooter, and I let Mark do all the video work. I was not going to tell him where he had to be, what angles or anything. So that was him. So he got there, and I missed the first frog, and then I missed the second frog, and so I was making up. Oh, the sun was in my eyes. Every time I missed, it hit my arm. Whatever. I must have missed like 4 frogs.
Yeah.
And then as we was working around the pond, we seen a rabbit, and I took a shot at him, and the sun was in my eyes again. I finally got the rabbit in the 3rd shot, and I think a frog on the 4th shot, and we ended that little thing by me walking up the road, frog and a rabbit in my hands. Frog, legs, and rabbit for breakfast. And then we came back, and Mark, I edited it.
You edited it.
I edited it and made it into a little story.
Yeah.
And I was telling Mark today that I need to do that again, because I've had youngsters watch it, and they got such a kick out of it. They thought it was a hoot, So it was fun. That was some of our video adventures.
Yeah, and then from there, I followed you and Dwight to a few places, to Northwest Territories caribou hunting, and then Dwight to Alaska on a grizzly bear hunt, and then I followed you to Idaho on an elk hunt, and Dr. Dave Samuelson,
Wyoming with Dwight too, didn't you?
Yeah, Wyoming for bear and elk with Dwight, and I think it was Illinois with Dave Samuel, and I think it was Kentucky with Brian Fortenbaugh.
Wow,
and
you got to go everywhere.
Yeah, so I got to meet a lot of great people, and have some good exposure to it.
It's hard work being a videographer. I mean, and you actually have to. I think you have to be a better hunter than the hunter, because you got to see the animal to get the cameras up and everything and capture it. And sometimes you have split seconds, especially doing this sort of stuff. And long hours, great pay. You get paid practically nothing.
Oh, boy, the pay.
Your producer here probably knows that one.
But you're right about, and Ryer certainly experiences this now, but, on all those, when Dwight or Brian or Dr. Samuels, or you're ready, you got to be already ready, catching, basically them getting in, at night, we used to have logging the footage. Of course, a lot of that was when you came back, because you had to review it on your camera and write down all your time codes and everything like that.
Plus, and the hunter can come back in and go to have dinner or fix dinner, depending on the type of hunt you have. But the videographer has got to change batteries, clean the camera, charge new batteries, and it goes on for a while after you get back to camp.
Yeah. Well, Ryer had it last time. He was videoing a snow goose hunt, and he thought he'd do a little drone work over the decoy spread.
Wait. I don't see how this ties into the hard work section of things.
This does.
I know where this is going, because I was there.
I know. But Larry wasn't there. But so this is
you just want to tell a story like this to embarrass me.
No, this is not to embarrass you. This is to say the hard work that he does. So why everyone was sitting down having lunch, he was going to go fly the drone over the decoy spread. The drone probably has a top speed of 30 miles an hour, which is difficult when the wind is blowing 50 miles an hour.
See, now we know why we don't want the story to be told on air.
So
he's getting his slugs in right now.
I'm not. I mean, he was out there and he hovered it up a ways. All right, I think I got this. And then started getting over the spread. And the next thing you know, the drone's flying a negative 20 miles an hour away from him, and he set it down in some remote cornfield unseen, and took the four-wheeler around and finally found it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, when he comes back, everyone's done with lunch. Lunch is all cleaned up and put away, and and it's time to go back out in the field. And so the life of the rest for the videographer never got to end.
Yeah, that was a great story. Sorry about that.
Was your favorite part me working hard, or was the favorite part learning about how the drone didn't come back?
It's kind of combination. It goes together. It comes together.
I now encourage my second grader to work on some of these basic math skills. Basic
math skills.
Basic math skills.
Maybe you should work on some basic speed skills.
Basic diction. Basic math skills. If the wind is blowing 50 miles an hour and your drone will fly 20 miles an hour, at how fast will the drone fly away from you?
Pretty fast. It took off in the other direction, and I was hammering on it to try to get back, but it just wasn't coming back. So
if you guys will excuse me, I want to go hog hunting here pretty quick.
All right, well, we'll wrap this up. Anyways, Larry, thank you very much for spending some time with us today, and we're up here in the hills, and hopefully we'll go out and stick us a hog.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much for tuning in and listening to Mark Ruppy Outdoors, the podcast, and hope you're all getting out and getting your last shot at turkey and some time on the water. And we've appreciate being able to come at you through the podcast airwaves. So, Ryer, any last things we got for anybody?
Well, you can check out the first edition of the Mark Ruppy Outdoors, the podcast, Drunk Hunter edition. If you'd like, that's on YouTube. It's a video and audio podcast. If you'd like to see Mark and our buddy TJ have bourbon and talk about hunting, it's a riot. We've had some good responses from that video, so people have watched it, enjoyed it. So if you're looking for something to do, go give that a watch.
Yeah, check out Mark Ruppy Outdoors, the Drunk Hunter podcast.
Drunk Hunter edition.
Drunk Hunter edition.
We're still working on the name. It was kind of we just kind of decided to do it. So you guys can watch that. You can also go watch any of the videos that we produce at YouTube, The Community Show. And of course, we're on Instagram and Facebook at The Community Show, www.thecommunityshow.tv, and www.markruppyoutdoors.com/podcast to listen to this podcast and also an entire history of podcasts.
I'm glad you said that, because as we know, I could never remember that.
Somebody's got to do the hard things around here.
Somebody's got to do the hard things around here. Again, thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next time.
So from Mark Ruppy Outdoors, good day.